How do you go about reworking a work like Berg's Lulu? Is it like editing a piece, or is it more like starting from scratch, starting from the beginning, and making it anew?
Well, first you have to dare doing it, and on the second hand, you have to, one hand, forget it, as you would start from zero. On the second hand, on the second way of thinking, of course, is there is a big masterpiece, and you have to take care of it somehow and not destroy it, because I didn't want to destroy Alban Berg. That's not what was my idea. But the idea is, what does Lulu mean for us maybe nowadays, and therefore it is like a new piece in a way. But of course, like in the tradition also of Austrian painters, you have a full starting point which is already there, and you try to overlay it with your own way of thinking, or your way of thinking your own art. So it becomes a bipolar person, I would say.
Do you feel like you're having a dialogue with Berg as you're writing this?
Well, it's maybe not a dialogue, because with a dialogue somebody has to be alive. But you know,
with his ghost.
His ghost, and maybe ghosts are more dangerous than live people. So yes, because the amazing thing is, you know, because I was kind of using all notes. I was not really changing any note of the first and second act, but deliberately making cuts on certain points, because I wanted also to shorten it. I think it's a very long piece, and to make it more tense. Even it's already a very tense piece, and therefore I had to see and look at every note, and every note is, I mean, it's a real masterpiece. Everything is there on a perfect way, but it was wonderful to be really there at every point and see all this incredible web. It's a huge web, elements coming up and floating away, and all these leitmotifs which are coming, and or Hauptstimmen, better not leitmotif, that's more like Wagner, but motifs coming up and dying away, and taking them serious. I didn't want to, but the only thing is that's why I said, why am I reorchestrating it? And this new kind of new sound world of Alban Berg, still it's all his notes, but because of this new, it's the reduction of his huge 120 people orchestra reduced to like 20 people. And then a new orchestration more in a jazzy.
Yeah, it gives it a more American jazzy feel.
Yes, a little bit. I mean,
yes.
Because it's still Berg.
Well, Act 3, very much so, because the scoring for Act 3 is because Berg never finished the opera,
right?
And so that's entirely new,
right? And
that is very different from the music in the first two acts.
Well, I had to do that. In my opinion, I had to do it. Because like the first and second act, because I have reorganized, is like in a recollection, and the third act is like we are in the nowadays of the 1970s, and then it's kind of, it's my music doesn't have to do anything with Berg, just also to really separate it, because I didn't want to fall into the language of Alban Berg, because it wouldn't have make sense for me. So that's why there's a kind of big gap, a musical language gap.
Berg has always influenced your work, and what is it that attracts you to Berg?
I don't think that it was so much influenced by Berg. I think maybe because I'm Austrian, I'm not influenced by Berg. I mean, I admire his music, and he kind of deliberately himself from the rigidness of the 12-tone period, let's say, of his time and his teacher. But when I started to become a composer, it was not like he's my big idol, but of course they're all there in the background, and I grew up with this kind of music because my uncle is a specialist of the Second Viennese School and also a composer. So the interesting thing actually for me here in this Lulu was, maybe that's why I have been attracted, and also I'm attracted and repelled by Lulu. And but the interesting thing is for me then, that's why the starting point came to think about getting more into this jazz idiom and idea, because my father is a jazz musician and my uncle and his brother is a musicologist and a composer of new music. So this was always in the family.
And you began as a jazz musician.
Right. So that was this interesting kind of a fight already in the family. So I thought actually this whole topic is already in Lulu somehow. And when I had to sit in front of the TV station in 1979 when it was finished by Friedrich Zerha and finally on TV in Austria, of course I had to sit there too as a child. So it's like a column which was standing in the family somehow. So now and then it's this masterpiece which has never been finished. The tragic somehow also life of Alban Berg and his attraction to numbers, and I'm myself been kind of obsessed by numbers. So there are several things why I was always, of course, attracted by Alban Berg. But then it was the main thing, like there is this jazz music already used in his score as a music for in the Ferne, so in the background. So I thought, okay, if I'm reorchestrating it and rethinking it, just why not use already his kind of orchestration, which is there in the jazz band of the first act, and take it as this general orchestra for this for my rewriting, rethinking it, and that's why it immediately came up that I want to set it into a different kind of social context, as Alban Berg already did with the piece of Wedekind from the 1900s in the late 20s and 30s.
There's an interesting disconnect in your version between the story and the historical background. In a sense, the historical background, the background of the civil rights movement, of the struggle for black rights in America, is key to the opera.
Yes.
And yet there's a disconnect between the story and that background, so that that struggle doesn't touch upon the story directly, and all the characters, Lulu in particular, seem fairly oblivious to the social ferment all around them. Is that what you were aiming at, to kind of disconnect between the wider story you're telling and the particular story of Lulu?
Yeah, I think first I wanted to tighten the story and put it in a more complex social background to enhance the problem of all these relations between these human beings in the story of Wedekind, let's say, because we are all influenced also by social issues. We can't forget it somehow, even if you want to forget it and people think they can forget it. So this kind of discrepancy, which already is in everybody of us, was a main topic for me. So in a way, I also did it like in the Brecht Lehrstücke. It's like a choir who brings in something you think it doesn't have anything to do, but actually it's very important. It's like a
bit like Greek theatre where there's a choir commenting on what's going on. Yes.
But it's not like a choir which is really commenting, but it's like really kind of completely external somehow. You hear these speeches.
Yes.
It's like it's not in the it doesn't do and it can do something in the brain of the audience. But it doesn't have to. You can bring it together what is going on, like on stage, and you hear these speeches, or you don't have to, and say, okay, I don't know what this kind of alien.
Oh, I think you do have to, because in a sense, the story of Lulu and the way you present Lulu also makes you ask questions about the civil rights movement. I think that's the impact of the opera. So there are three readings you can make of Lulu. In one sense, she's an expression of white sexual fantasy. Mm-hmm. In another sense, she is a woman trying to take control of her life in almost impossible circumstances. And then you can see her as someone who is impossibly narcissistic and self-centered.
Right.
And those three readings all collide in her.
Right.
And presumably that's partly what's in Berg as well, and presumably that's what you wanted with Lulu here.
Well, I think that that Wedekind and Berg, kind of the two founders, inventors of this mystical figure, are more exaltedly and romantically happy with this figure. I'm not. Yes. I have to say, I have a more kind of distant view of this person. or it's a figure, it's not a person. That's also important. Yeah, for me, it's kind of more of a cutout, but she represents such a lot. She's a projection screen for so many people. And still, if you talk to many people, I mean, it's so interesting. Everybody tells you a story of he had or she had a Lulu in her life and whatever in his life. So I mean, it's wonderful that there's this strong, invented figure who triggers so much in all of us. And as you said, there's also many possibilities to see or to look at this person. That's why, for me, it was important to even show that there can be a social background, which is there's a huge struggle, there is a fight, there's social issues, there are racism, there's sexism, and we all have to deal with it, and we can't ignore it, even nowadays. And there are people who just have their egoistic way of life and don't know that they are influenced by all these issues. And then they say, do you want to be influenced? Do you want to hear what's going on in the surrounding and what surrounds you and your life, and or you don't want to be influenced because you are kind of more into your own world and not knowing that you are kind of. That's why it's a reason why maybe your relationships maybe don't work, or why you have all these problems with violence. Or.
But what's interesting is that all the characters are disconnected from that.
Yeah.
The kind of that social history and the social background. None of them acknowledge. Or
well,
none
I
of them
did one thing is like when Mr. Bloom's son come in and runs in and says that a hydrogen bomb was tested.
Yes.
So he wants to bring in something into this oblivious people only thinking about themselves, and their own problems. That there is something outside. There is some big issues going on. I mean, it's a world issue. And they're kind of nothing, nobody even listens to him. And even they make the issue that it could be an important news. They say, okay, let's use it for us. It could be a issue. It's not even, they never take it seriously. And this is a way of thinking which irritates me. And that's why I wanted also to show that maybe why is this Lulu and the whole society of this Lulu is for me a problematic surrounding.
Now, with Lulu, you can ask which of those three readings is the real Lulu, and you'll probably
and I
say
don't want to.
None or all of them.
Right.
Yeah. But
I don't want to tell you, you have to read it like
well, that's right. But in a sense, as an audience, you're forced to ask the same question about the struggle for black rights. Which is the real struggle for, what is the real struggle for black rights? And there seems almost an implicit criticism, therefore, of that struggle, asking which is the real struggle, what was the struggle really about? In the same way as we ask, what is Lulu really about? We ask that same question about the civil rights movement. Is that what you were?
No,
you were attempting?
Because I really think it was so important, and it's still so important. I think if you read, because I read a lot of Martin Luther King speeches. I mean, if you can just give these speeches now in the same way, and they're completely the same importance and necessity as he has expressed them since the 1950s. So I think it is, especially our problems now is more hidden. The fight and the struggle for individual freedom with unwarranted infringements of governments and private organizations is still there, but it's so hidden. Everything seems so democratic, but it's not true. So this issue is still there, and I think his speeches are so important nowadays again. And it's for all, because there's a policy of ostracism is still there.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important, and I don't question this movement at all.
There's a long history of contemporary opera dealing with complex political issues, and American Lulu is part of that history. Is that history, is the attempt by opera to deal with such issues, is it a means of throwing new light on those issues, in this case on racism, or is it a way of making opera relevant to a new audience, a new age?
But maybe it's a mixture of both. Actually, music in politics is always it's a very complicated theme, and I don't think if it really works. But I think it's for me in my art form, even maybe it's an old-fashioned art form. It's important to bring issues into music, especially if you have an opera or it's a music theater. It's not only mere music, absolute music, and not mere music, absolute music. Then for me, it's a topic which also should show us something about our lives. That's why I always also was involved with living writers, because I want to say something about our life, even if it's in an old-fashioned art form.
To what extent has your experience of America shaped your writing, your music in American Lulu?
That's a very personal question. Well, my uncle emigrated to the United States when he was very young. So when I was like already 6-7 years, I always visited my uncle already, who has 2-3 restaurants in Long Island. I was always fascinated by this incredible discrepancy about things which are really wonderful and on the other side really horrible. And this is actually American Lulu. I mean, this is why I decided also to set it in the racist South of the United States in the 1950s, because it's incredible if you think it's not long ago how
Sure.
democratic was.
Half a century ago.
I mean, it's not long ago how democracy was treated. Really stepped down and kind of didn't exist. With one, because it's only because you did have a different kind of race or a different kind of religion. So this incredible discrepancy between incredible possibilities, a wonderful openness, and on the other hand, a complete oppression and surveillance and everything. I could go on, and I mean, I don't want to, but this is what, of course, has kind of influenced me. Also, since a child, it's always like you want to go there and you want to live there, but then I say, oh my God, I can't live with that. It hurts my everything, my political feelings, my social feelings, and everything. And therefore, American Lulu was kind of for me important for myself to kind of reflect on that on a musical level.
So do you see it as a kind of a European take on America, that love-hate relationship with America? There's a kind of something peculiarly European about it,
Yes,
isn't there?
yeah, I think so. I think very often European artists have a different kind of view on American than Americans on themselves, of course. But it's also interesting why so many American artists come to Europe and feel like better treated here than there.